Hi all. Everything in my video is pulled from the public domain, and I am using them under the Fair Use, Fair Dealings guidelines. Everything I say is my own opinion. You should look into this information for yourselves, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Good morning, everybody. We are starting off with this picture of Johnny because I have a little bit of a surprise for you guys about Johnny, if you haven't heard about it already. So here we go. Lots of information, and let's just jump in and get there, shall we? Let's go. We're starting off this morning. King Charles held audiences at Buckingham Palace for high commissioners. The first one was His Excellency Mr. Robert Ondranjak. I hope I said that right. He's the ambassador for Slovakia. And after that, it was His Excellency Mr. Jeremiah Mamabolo, who is the High Commissioner for South Africa. Next up, the information came out, but of course it was embargoed until it was just released, that Catherine, Princess of Wales, is patron of an Army officer's expedition to be the first woman to cross Antarctica. She is a British Army medical officer from Derby, and she wants to be the first woman of color to complete an unaided trip all the way across by herself. She is the first woman of color to complete an unaided trip to the South Pole, which she did in January of 2021. And if you can believe this one, she completed the 700-mile trek unaided by herself in only 40 days last year. Cool. And then she's not doing stuff like this. She's a physiotherapist who works at a regional rehabilitation unit in Buckinghamshire, providing rehab to injured soldiers and officers. How cool is that? You go, girl. You're going to make it. All right, Princess Anne has arrived in Uganda. She's there on a 4-day visit. So on her first day, she was very busy. Her first visit of the day was to the Medical Research Council, known as the MRC. They do work in health research for infectious and non-communicable diseases such as COVID-19. So she got to observe what they do, how they do it, which is pretty cool. And as you can see, her husband, Tim Lawrence, went with her, which I thought was very nice. Her next stop was at the Uganda Virus Research Institute, where she got to see again their state-of-the-art laboratory facilities, as well as their clinical research facilities. Very impressive. When this tour was over, she and her husband headed off to the next stop, third stop of the day, which is the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine Uganda Research Unit. And once again, Anne and her husband were taken on a tour of what appears to be a state-of-the-art research facility. Looks like the day was a huge success. Then this person above said that she was hosted to a dinner by Anne and her husband at the British High Commissioner's residence in Kampala. And apparently, according to what she wrote on Twitter, the entire conversation went about the patronages that Anne was there to support. And of course, she wished her lots of luck with them. Now, this leads into the next story. For people that were paying attention, Princess Anne was wearing her mother's sapphire and pearl brooch. You see it there on the left. And so she paid tribute to her mother by wearing this. Now, of course, there's multiple photos of this gorgeous brooch. Apparently, the pearl that's dropped down can be removed if you so wish it. All right, moving on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good news. Johnny Thompson, our Johnny, Major Johnny, has been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel Johnny Thompson. There has never been a more deserving man. Go, Johnny. Congratulations. All right, we're moving on now to the Archetypes podcast. There's been like 7 of them, and there's a theme that runs through them, and we're going to take a look at those, okay? I've said before, and I still stand by what I said, she's using this to clap back at people and to get back at people and to throw shade at the royal family, or she was until the Queen died. So let's start with, the beginning of the podcast, shall we? So the first podcast, she had Serena Williams, her best bud on there to talk about how ambition is a bad word. However, I pointed out, and I know everybody else did, that without ambition, Serena wouldn't have gotten where she is today. We all heard about the soap story again, and then Meghan took the attention back to herself and talked about the non-existent fire in the nursery, and she took a swipe at the royal family because it was so terrible. They made her go back out because Archie wasn't in the room and there was no fire, and she called the mansion that she was staying in a housing unit, and she's taking swipes at people, right? That was the first one. Next up, we had the diva, the duality of diva with Mariah Carey. Now, who can forget that Mariah Carey told her, "You're a diva." You are a diva. And what did Meghan do to negate this? She waited until the whole thing was over, till Mariah was gone, and then she talked for like 5 minutes on how she realized that Mariah didn't mean it in a bad way. And let's not forget, it was during this interview where she said, "I had never been treated like a black woman before until I started dating my now husband." She still won't say Harry's name. Remember that? Then we had the third one, the stigma of singleton, where in order to make it relatable, because again, she brings everything back to herself, Meghan said she was an ugly duckling and she had no friends. Now, of course, all you have to do is go online to see the pictures of her with all of her friends and her groups and where she was crowned prom queen. Yeah, she was not the lonely person that she wants you to believe that she was. All right, next up. Now, the next one was the Asian stereotypes, where she pulled movies from over 20 years ago, comedy movies, and tried to use them to, prove her point. And Lucy Liu, who was not on the show, spoke out against the things that Meghan had said during the show, because she was basically blasting Hollywood. She's getting back at Hollywood because they wouldn't make her a star. I completely agree. Now, we did the next one, and this one was with Jenny Slate and Constance Wu, and they're talking about the word crazy. And of course, Meghan brought the whole thing back around to her and said that she had been labeled as crazy. And she said, when you use that word, it diminishes a woman's credibility. And then, of course, she went on about her mental health. She brought the whole thing back to her again. I'm sure you guys can see the pattern at this point of what's happening here. All right, moving on. All right, the next word that she wanted to break down was the word bimbo. Now, I'm sure you guys are seeing a pattern. First, she had Serena Williams, who's a multimillionaire. Then she had Mariah Carey, who's a multimillionaire. Now she has Paris Hilton, who's a multimillionaire. So, and Paris Hilton used the bimbo narrative to make herself a multimillionaire, just like Serena Williams used ambition to make herself a multimillionaire. So she's really making, I hate to say it, she's making a fool of herself. But the latest one is the one that absolutely hits out at the book that was put out by Valentine Lowe about her bullying. Let's not forget that Schillings, her attorneys in the UK, sent him all kinds of threats in an attempt to get him to not publish his article in his book. He published them anyway, and he hasn't heard from Schillings since then, because you can't sue when stuff is the truth. And she's trying to make it out that it's just the tone of her voice, and it's just, because she's black that people are insinuating that she's a bully, when really she's not. I have to agree with Helen Peoples. How is Meghan going to talk about the myth of the angry black woman when she herself said in the podcast with Mariah Carey that she didn't know what it was like to be a black woman before she married Prince Harry? You see what I'm saying? She's just, and again, the fact checker she hired missed that. You know what? Instead of inviting all of her multimillionaire friends on there who are going to agree with her, I would like her to invite Candace Owens on there, another African-American lady married to a white man. Have her on your show. It's pretty obvious that she wants you to think of her as a meek, quiet little nobody who tiptoes into a room and is afraid to raise her voice, and she doesn't have confidence, etc., etc. However, I've shown you these before, and I'm going to show them to you again. Does this look like a woman who has to tiptoe around because she's concerned? Watch these. Now, of course, there was discussion on the news about this. I'm happy to say that they completely agree with me. So listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul Rose, this seems really transparent that she's utilizing American media. She's utilizing this podcast to respond kind of vaguely to accusations that both Tom Bauer and Valentine Lowe have made against her in their recent books. She wants you to know that she's not a bully. She's just an assertive woman. And it's like Rosie said, you're going to have to come to your own conclusion on whether or not that's the truth. But she's clearly utilizing this podcast as a vehicle to respond to some of those accusations in a way that's not as blatant as a sit-down Oprah interview, but she's, trying to paint a picture of who she wants the world to see her as through this podcast, utilizing some of these bigger stars and celebrities to elevate herself.
To some people will say, amplify her voice further. The strategy she's trying to use to sort of reset the narrative and define herself, who she wants to be seen as, is that working in the States? Are people sort of favourable towards her?
Rosie, not really. I mean, I have to be honest with you. If you look at the numbers, her podcast, that very first episode, it blew up. I think people were very curious, but lately Kim Kardashian's beating her on the Spotify charts. There's less and less interest in her. And I think that American media has noticed this redirection in the narrative. And it's, I think we're pleasantly surprised that she's complaining less, but it's also coming off as insincere because it's such a 180.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I really want your thoughts. What do you think about the themes that are running through these podcasts where the only people that she's talking to are multimillionaires, and a lot of the words that she's saying are bad words are the reason that these people became multimillionaires? I mean, I wonder if you guys see what I see. You know what I'm saying? Are you catching what I'm catching? I really want your thoughts on that. Number one. Number two, what do you think about Johnny getting a promotion? Go Johnny. All right. Leave your comments below. Double check to make sure you're still subscribed if you've already hit the button. If you haven't, go ahead and subscribe. You know you want to. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter, Getter, Rumble. You can email me. You can follow me on Patreon. The links to all of those are in the description box. For those who have donated money through my coffee fund and through the thanks button, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.